Good evening, everyone. I have endeavored in this ghostly little story to raise the ghost of an idea, which shall not put you out of humor with yourselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt your houses pleasantly, and no one wish to lay it. Your faithful friend and servant, Charles Dickens. Marley was dead to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial had been signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge had signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. I don't need to say that I know my own knowledge what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have even inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade. However, the wisdom of our ancestors is in this simile, and my unhallowed hand shall not disturb it, or the country's done for. You will therefore permit me to repeat emphatically that Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead. Well, of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for, I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole administrator, his sole executor, his sole assign, his sole residuary legatee, his sole friend, his sole mourner. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name, however. There it stood years afterward above the warehouse door. Scrooge and Marley's. The firm was known as Scrooge and Marley's. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge, and sometimes Marley. He answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Hard and sharp as flint, secret and self-contained, as solitary as an oyster. He carried his own low temperature always about with him. He iced his office in the dog days, and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas time. The hardest of rain. External heat and cold had little influence upon him. No warmth could warm, no cold could chill him. No wind that blew was bitterer than he. No falling snow more intent upon its purpose. No pelting rain less open to entreaty. The hardest of rain and snow and hail and sleet could boast the advantage over him in only one respect. They often came down handsomely, and Scrooge never did. No one ever stopped him in the streets to say with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to visit me?" No beggar implored him to bestow a trifle. No child asked him what it was o'clock. No man or woman ever once in his entire life inquired the way to such and such a place of Scrooge. Why, even the blind man's dog appeared to know him, and on his coming on would tug their owners into alleyways and up courts. But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, upon a Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting, foggy weather. The city clocks had only just gone 3, but it was quite dark already. The door of the Scrooge's counting house was open, that he might keep a wary eye upon his clerk, Bob Cratchit, who, in a dismal little cell beyond, a sort of tank, was copying letters. Now Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so much smaller, it looked like one coal. But he couldn't replace it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own office. And so, surely, as the clock came in with the shovel, the master predicted it would be necessary for them to part. And therefore, the clerk put on his long comforter and tried to warm himself at a candle, in which effort, not being a man of strong imagination, he failed. Merry Christmas to you, Uncle! God save you! It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew Fred, who'd come upon him so quickly this was the first intimation he had of his approach. There! Humbug! Christmas humbug? Oh, you don't mean that, I'm sure. I do. Merry Christmas. Out upon Merry Christmas. What is Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer. If I had my will, nephew, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stick of holly through his heart he should. Uncle, nephew, keep Christmas in your way. Let me keep it in mine. Keep it? But you don't keep it. Well, let me leave it alone then. What good may it do you? What good it has ever done you? Well, there are many things from which I might have derived good by which I have not profited. I dare say Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time when it has come round as a good time. As a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of in the whole calendar of the year, when men and women seem of one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely, and to think of others as fellow travellers to the grave, and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. Therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pockets, I believe it has done me good and will do me good, and I say, God bless it! The clerk in the tank applauded. Let me hear another sound from you, and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. You're quite the powerful speaker, sir. I wonder you don't go into Parliament. Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow. Scrooge said that he would see him in it yellow. Yes, indeed he did. He went the whole length of the expression and said that he would see him in that extremity first. But why? Why? Why did you get married? Because I fell in love. Because I fell in love. Growled Scrooge as if that were the one thing in the world more ridiculous than a Merry Christmas. Good afternoon. Nay, Uncle, but you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it as reason for not coming now? I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why cannot we be friends? Good afternoon. I'm truly sorry with all my heart to hear you so resolute. We have never had any quarrels which I've been a party. However, I've made the trial in homage to Christmas, and I intend to keep my Christmas humor to the last. So, Merry Christmas, Uncle, and a Happy New Year. Good afternoon. Scrooge's nephew left the office without an angry word, notwithstanding. The clerk, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, let two other people in. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, and now stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office. They had books and papers in their hands and bowed to him. Scrooge and Marley's, I believe, said the gentleman, referring to a list. Have we the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley? Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago, this very night. We've no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner. During this festive season of the year, said the second gentleman, taking up his pen, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provisions for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at the present. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comfort, sir. Where are there no prisons? Plenty of prisons. And union workhouses, are they still in operation? Well, they are still. I wish I could say they were not. Good. I was afraid, from what you had told me, something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. I'm very glad to hear it. Well, under the impression they scarcely furnish Christian cheer, a mind or body to the multitude. A few of us are endeavouring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and things of want. We choose this time because it is a time of all others when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall we put you down for? Nothing. Oh, you wish to be anonymous. I wish to be alone. You ask me what I wish, and that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas time, and I can't afford to make people merry. I help to support the prisons and workhouses. They cost enough. Those who are badly off must go there. But many can't go there, and many would rather die. If they had rather die, they had better do it, and decrease the surplus population. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon, sir. At length, the hour for shutting up the counting house arrived, with an ill-willed Scrooge dismounting from his stool, tacitly admitted the fact to the expectant clerk, who instantly snuffed out his candle and put on his hat. You'll want all three tomorrow, I suppose. If quite convenient, sir. It's not convenient, and it isn't fair. Oh, but if I were to stop £half-a-crown for it, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound. And yet you don't think me ill-used when I pay an entire day's wages for no work. Only once a year. A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. Still, I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier next morning. The clerk promised he would, and Scrooge walked out with a growl. There. He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy suite of rooms in a lowering pile of buildings up a yard. The building was so old and so dreary, for nobody lived in it but Scrooge. The other rooms all being let out as offices. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on Scrooge's door, except that it was brass and very large. Also, that Scrooge had seen it night and morning during his whole residence in the place. Also, that Scrooge had as little of what is called fancy about him as any man in the city of London. And yet Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, without its undergoing any immediate process of change, not a knocker, but Marley's face. Marley's face, with a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in the dark cellar. Now, someone explain to me, what exactly does a bad lobster look like? Any ideas? How about you, sir? Do you know what could a bad lobster look like? Only one leg. Oh, one leg. Oh, do you have an idea?
Bad lobster would look like a moldy, rotten compost pit looking at grub.
Oh, now that is a bad lobster indeed. Now, it wasn't angry or ferocious, no, but it looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up upon its ghostly forehead. Scrooge looked fixedly at this phenomenon. It was a knocker again. Scrooge said, "Pooh-pooh," and closed the door with a bang. The sound resounded through the house like thunder. He locked the door, walked across the hall, and went up the stairs, slowly too, trimming a candle as he went. Up Scrooge went, not caring a button for it being very dark. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. But before he closed his heavy door, he walked through all the other rooms to see that all was right. He had just enough recollection of the face to desire to do that. Quite satisfied, Scrooge closed his heavy door and locked himself in, double-locked himself in, which was not his usual custom. Thus, secured against surprise, Scrooge took off his coat and his cravat, and put on his slippers, nightgown, and nightcap, and sat down before his very low fire to take his gruel. As Scrooge threw his head back in his chair, his glance happened to rest upon a bell, a disused bell that hung in the room and communicated for some purpose now long forgotten, with the chamber in the highest story of the building. It was with great astonishment, and with a strange, inexplicable dread that as he looked, he saw the spell begin to sway. Oh, it soon made a loud, it soon everybody in the house. This was succeeded by a clinking noise deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain over the casks in the wine merchant's cellar. Then he heard it much louder on the floor below. Then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door. Out! It's how much still, I won't believe it. It passed straight through his heavy door, and a spectre came into the room before his eyes. And upon its coming in, the dying flame leapt up, as though it cried, I know him, Marley's ghost. The same face, the very same. Marley in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights, and boots. A chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail, and was made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. How now? What do you want with me? Much. Who are you? Ask me who I was. Who were you then? Your particular for the shade. In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley. You don't believe in me? I don't. What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your senses? I don't know. Why do you doubt your senses? Because a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheat. Why, you may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. Yes, there's more of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are. It's humbug, I tell you, humbug! And this the spirit raised a frightful cry. It shook its chain with such a dismal and appalling noise that Scrooge held on tight to his chair to save himself from falling into a swoon. But how much greater was his horror when the spirit, removing the bandage from about his head, as if it were too warm to wear indoors, his lower jaw dropped down upon his breast. Oh, mercy, dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me? Man of the worldly mind, do you believe in me or not? I do. I must. But why do spirits walk here, and why do they come to me? It is required of every man that the spirit within him should go forth among his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if that spirit chooses not to do so in life, he is condemned to do so after death. He is doomed to wander through the world and witness what he cannot share, or might have shared in life, and turn to happiness. What, Peter, tell me why. I wear the chains that forged in life. I made them link by link, and yard by yard. I girded it all of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you? Or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as long and as heavy as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is upon this chain you bear. Well, tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob. I have none to give. A very little more is permitted me. I cannot stay. I cannot rest. I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me, in life my spirit never rode beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing home. And weary journeys lie before me. 7 years dead and travelling the whole time. Do you travel fast? On the wings of the wind. Well, you might have got over a good quantity of ground in 7 years. Oh, blind man, blind man! Not to know that no space of bread can make amends for one life's opportunities misused. Yet I was like this man. I once was like this man. But you were always a good man at business, Jacob. Business? Mankind was my business. The human welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down. I never once raised them to that blessed star which led wise men to a poor abode. Where there no poor homes to which its light could conduct me. Hear me, my time is nearly gone. I will, but don't be hard upon me, Jacob. Don't be flowery, pray. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and a hope of escaping my fate. A chance and hope of my own procuring, Ebenezer. You were always a good friend to me, Jacob, thank you. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Is that the chance and hope you mentioned? I think I'd rather not. Without the visitations, you cannot hope to shun the path I now tread. Expect the first, when the bell tolls 1. Expect the second the next night at the same hour. The third the next night, when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and look that for your own sake you remember what has passed between us. It walked slowly backwards from him, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little, such that when he had reached it, it was wide open. He beckoned Scrooge to approach, which he did. He became sensible of confused noises in the air, incomprehensible sounds of lamentation and regret, wailings inexpressibly sorrowful and self-accusatory. The spectre, after listening for a brief moment, joined in the mournful dirge, then floated out upon the bleak, dark night. Scrooge closed the window by which he had exited and examined the door. It was not locked, as he had locked it with his own hand, and the bolts were undisturbed. Scrooge started to say, but stopped at the first syllable. And being in need of repose from the emotion he'd undergone, all the fatigues of the day, or his glimpse of the invisible world, or the lateness of the hour, Scrooge went straight to bed, without undressing, and fell asleep on the instant. Potatoes. When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that looking out of his bed, he could scarcely distinguish the opaque walls from the transparent windows of his chamber. Suddenly, the church bell tolled a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy 1. Lights flashed up in the room on the instant, and the curtain of his bed was drawn aside by a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium and being diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it, and the tenderest bloom was on the skin. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and, in singular contradiction to that wintry emblem, had its dress trimmed in summer flowers. But the strangest thing of all was from the crown of its head there sprang forth a bright, clear jet of light, by which all of this was visible. Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold? I am. Who in? What are you? I am the ghost of Christmas past. Long past? No, your past. The things you will see with me are but shadows of things that have been. They will have no consciousness of us. Scrooge made bold to inquire what business brought him there. Your welfare. Rise and walk with me. Scrooge rose, but finding that the spirit made towards the window, grabbed its robe in supplication. I am mortal and liable to fall. Bear but a touch of my hand there, and you will be upheld in more than this. As the words were spoken, they passed through the walls of his chamber, and now stood in the busy thoroughfares of the city. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops. Here, too, it was Christmas time. The spirit stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it. I know it. Was I apprenticed here? They went in, and at the sight of an old gentleman in a Welsh wig, seated behind a desk so high that if he were but 2 inches taller, his head must have knocked against the ceiling, Scrooge cried out, it's old Fezziwig. Oh, bless his heart, it's old Fezziwig alive again. Old Fezziwig laid down his pen and looked at the clock, which was pointed to the hour of 7. He rubbed his hands together, adjusted his capacious waistcoat, mopped all over himself from his shoes to his organ of benevolence, and called out in a comfortable, oily, rich, fat, jovial voice, "Yo ho there, Ebenezer! Dick!" A living, moving picture of Scrooge's former self, a young man, came briskly into the room, accompanied by his fellow apprentice. "It's Dick Wilkins, to be sure. Oh, it's my old former apprentice, bless me, yes, there he is. Oh, he was very much attached to me, was Dick. Oh, poor Dick, oh dear, dear. Yo ho, my boys, no more work tonight. It's Christmas Eve, Dick. Christmas, Ebenezer. Let's have these shutters up before the man can say, Jack Robinson, clear away, me lads, let's have lots of room here. It was all done in an instant. In came every man and woman employed in the business. In they all came, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing and some pulling. In they all came anyhow and everyhow. And away they went. And there were dances, and there were forfeits, and more dances. And there was cake, and there was negus, and a great piece of cold roast, and a great piece of cold boiled. And there were minced pies, and plenty of beer. Right. However, the great effect of the evening came after the roast and the boiled, when the fiddler struck up Sir Roger de Coverley. Then old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig. Hello, my darling. Oh, that's a lovely hat. You're so lovely today, aren't you? Oh, thank you, Mrs. Fezziwig. That was delightful. Here, I'll straight at you. Oh. When the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side of the door, and shaking hands with each person as he or she left, wished him or her a Merry Christmas. When all had retired but the two lads, they did the same to them, and thus the cheerful voices died away, and the two lads were left to their beds, which were under a counter in the back shop. "A small matter," said the ghost, "to make these silly folks so full of gratitude. He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much he deserves this praise? Oh, it's not that, spirit. He had the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Why, the happiness he gave is quite as great as if it cost a fortune." As if it cost a fortune. What is the matter? Oh, nothing particular. Something, I think. No. No, I should wish to say a word or two to my clock just now, that's all. My time grows short. Quick. This was not addressed to Scrooge, nor to anyone whom he could see, but it produced an immediate effect. Over again he saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of life. And he was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young maiden in a black dress, in whose eyes there were tears. "It matters little," she said softly to Scrooge's former self. "To you, very little. Another idol has displaced me." "What idol has displaced you?" "A gilded one." "You fear the world so much, Ebenezer. I have watched all of your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until your master passion gain engrosses you. Have I not? Well, what then? Even if I have grown so much wiser, what then? I am not changed towards you, have I? Have I ever sought release from our engagement? In words? No, never. In what then? in a changed nature, an altered form, another atmosphere of life, another hope as to its great end. If you were free today, tomorrow, yesterday, can even I believe you would choose a doubtless girl? Do I not know that your repentance and regret would surely follow? I do. And I release you with a full heart for the love of him you once were. May you find happiness in the life you've chosen. Spirit, show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me? I told you, these are the shadows of things that have been. They are what they are. Do not blame me. Remove me. I cannot bear it. Leave me. Take me back. Hold me no longer. As Scrooge struggled with the spirit, he became conscious of being exhausted and overcome with an irresistible drowsiness. And of being in his own room. He had scarcely time to reel to bed before he sank into a heavy sleep. Ow. Scrooge awoke in his own room. Yes, there was no doubt about it. But it and the adjoining sitting room, into which he shuffled in his slippers, attracted by a great light that had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green, it looked a perfect grove. The leaves of holly, mistletoe, and ivy reflected back the light, as if many little mirrors had been scattered there, and such a mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney. Heaped upon the floor to form a kind of throne were turkeys, geese, game, brawn, great joints of meat, long wreaths of sausages, minced pies, plum puddings, barrels of oysters, red-hot chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, juicy oranges, luscious pears, immense 12 cakes, and great bowls of punch. In easy state upon this throne, there sat a giant, glorious to see, who bore a glowing torch and raised it high above his head to shine its light upon Scrooge as he came peeping round the door. Come in and know me better, man. I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me. You have never seen the likes of me before. Never. I've never walked forth with the younger members of my family, meaning my elder brothers born these late years. I don't believe I have. I'm afraid I have not. Have you any brothers, Spirit? More than 1,800 of them. A tremendous family to provide for. Spirit, conduct me where you will. I went forth last night on compulsion and learned a lesson, which is working now. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it. Touch my robe. Scrooge did as he was told and held it fast. The room and all of its contents vanished instantly, and they stood on city streets on a snowy Christmas morning. Scrooge and the ghost passed on invisible, straight to Scrooge's clerk's house. And on the threshold of the door the spirit smiled and stopped to bless Bob Cratchit's dwelling with the sprinklings of his torch. Then up rose Mrs. Cratchit, Bob's wife, dressed out poorly in a twice-turned gown, braided with ribbons which are cheap, and make a goodly show for 6pence. And she laid the cloth, assisted by Belinda Cratchit, the second of her daughters, while Master Peter plunged a fork into a saucepan of potatoes. Now 2 younger Cratchits, a boy and a girl, came tearing in, screaming that outside the baker's they had smelt the goose and had known it as their own. And these young Cratchits danced about the table and exalted Master Peter to the skies as he blew on the fire, till the slow potatoes bubbling up knocked loudly on the saucepan lid to be let out and peeled. Oh, in whatever has got your precious father then, and your brother Tiny Tim? is Father coming? Cried the two young Cratchits who were everywhere at once. In came Bob the father, his threadbare clothes all darned up and brushed to look seasonable, and upon his shoulder sat Tiny Tim. Alas for Tiny Tim, he bore a little crutch and had his limbs supported by an iron frame. The two young Cratchits hustled Tiny Tim and bore him off to the wash-house, that he might hear the pudding singing in the copper. And how did little Tim behave today? Oh, as good as gold, and better. He gets thoughtful sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things you've ever heard. He told me coming home that he hoped the people saw him in the church, because he's a cripple. And it might be pleasant for them to remember upon Christmas Day who it was made lame beggars walk and blind men see. I do believe he's growing more strong and hearty. Master Peter and the two young Cratchits went to fetch the goose, with which they soon returned in high procession. Oh, there was never such a goose. Bob said he didn't believe there was ever such a goose cooked. Its tenderness and flavour, size and cheapness were the themes of universal admiration. Egged out in applesauce and mashed potatoes, it was a sufficient dinner for the whole family. At last the dinner was done, the cloth cleared, the hearth swept, and a fire made up. A compound in a jug being tasted and considered perfect. Apples and oranges were placed upon the table, and a shovelful of chestnuts on the fire. Then all the Cratchit family drew round the hearth in what Bob called a circle. And at Bob Cratchit's elbow stood the family's display of glass, 2 tumblers and a custard cup, without a handle. These held the hot stuff from the jug, however, as well as golden goblets would have done, and Bob served it out with beaming looks, and chestnuts sputtered and crackled noisily on the fire. Then Bob proposed, "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us," which all the family re-echoed. "God bless us, everyone," said Tiny Tim the last of all. He sat very close to his father's side upon his little stool. Bob held his withered little hand in his, as if he loved the child and wished to keep him by his side, and dreaded that he might be taken from him. "Spirit," said Scrooge with an interest he had never felt before. "A spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see a vacant seat in the cool chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die." "Oh, no, 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 kind spirit, say he will be spared. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, none of my race will find him here." "But what then? If he be like to die, he had better do it, and decrease the surplus population." Scrooge hung his head to hear his own words quoted by the spirit, and was overcome with penitence and grief. Bob Cratchit told the family that he had a situation in his eye for Master Peter, which if obtained would bring in a full 5 and 6 weekly. The two young Cratchits laughed tremendously at the idea of Master Peter's being a man of business. All the while, the jug and the chestnuts went round and round, and by they had a song from Tiny Tim, who had a plaintive little voice, but sung it very well. Perhaps, "In the bleak midwinter, frosted wind may blow. Earth was hard as iron, water like a stone. Snow had fallen, snow on snow, snow on snow. In the bleak midwinter, long ago. But what can I give for as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. What can I give him? Give my heart. There was nothing of high mark in this. They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes scanty. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the times. And as they faded away, looking happier yet in the bright sprinkling of the spirit's torch at parting, Scrooge had his eye upon them, especially upon Tiny Tim until the last. It was a great surprise to Scrooge as this seemed vanished to hear a hearty laugh. It was a much greater surprise to Scrooge to recognize it as his own nephews, and to find himself in a bright, dry, gleaming room with the spirit standing smiling by his side and looking at that same nephew. He called Christmas a humbug. Well, as I live, he did, and he believed it too. Well, more shame for him, Fred, said Fred's pretty young wife. Bless the woman, always in earnest. He's quite the comical old fellow, that's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offences carry their own punishments, and I have nothing to say against him. But who suffers by his ill whims? Himself always. Here he takes it in his head to dislike us, and won't come and dine with us, and well, what's the consequence? You don't miss much dinner. Indeed, I believe he loses a very good dinner. All the assembled friends said the same, and they should be allowed to be competent judges, for they had just had dinner, and with dessert upon the table were now seated round the fire by lamplight. After tea they had music, for they were a musical family, and knew what they were about when they sang a glee or a catch, I can assure you. How about angels from the realms of glory, wing your flight o'er all the earth. Ye who sang creation's story, now proclaim our Messiah's birth. Gloria, ye excelsis Deo, Gloria, in excelsis Deo. Wonderful! But they didn't devote the whole evening to music. No. After a while they played out forfeits. For it's good to be a child sometime. Never better than at Christmas, when its mighty founder was a child himself. They played a game of blind man's bluff, of course they did. Here's a new game, said Scrooge. Oh, 1/2 hour more, spirit, just one. It was a game called Yes and No, where Scrooge's nephew must think of something, and the others guess at what. He only answering to their question yes or no, as was the case. The fire of questioning to which he was exposed elicited from him that he was thinking of an animal. A live animal. Rather a disagreeable animal. A savage animal. An animal that growled and grunted sometimes and talked sometimes. And lived in the city of London, oh my. And walked the streets freely and was not made a show of, nor led by anyone. Did not live in a menagerie, and was never killed in a marketplace. Nor was it a horse, an ass, a cow, a bull, a tiger, dog, a pig, a cat, a bear. Yes, a bear. No, not a bear. Of course not a bear. Talking bears in London. I hear they like marmalade. At each new question, this young nephew became so tickled that he was obliged to get up off the sofa and stamp. At last, a plump young sister cried out, "Oh, I have found it out, Fred. I know what it is. I know what it is." Well, what is it then? It's your Uncle Scrooge! Which it certainly was. Admiration was the sentiment, though some objected that the answer to was it a bear or to have been yes. Well, he has given us plenty of merriment, I am sure, and it would be ungrateful of us not to toast his health. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man, whatever he is. He wouldn't take it from me. But may he have it nevertheless to Uncle Scrooge. Scrooge had imperceptibly become so gay and light of heart that he would have drank to the unconscious company in inaudible speech. However, the whole scene passed in the breath of the last words spoken by his nephew, and he and the ghost were again upon their travels. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy ending. The spirits stood by sick beds, and they were cheerful. By struggling men, and they were patient in their greater hope. By poverty, and he felt rich. In faraway lands, and they were at home. In almshouse, in jail, in hospital, in misery's every refuge, where vain man in his brief little of 40 had not made fast the door and barred the spirits out. He kept his blessing, and taught Scrooge his precepts. A clock struck 12. Scrooge looked about for the ghost and saw him no more. But he remembered the prediction made by old Chickamauga, and lifting his eyes beheld the solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. Slowly, gravely, silently the phantom approached, and as it drew near, Scrooge bent down upon his knee. For in the very air through which it moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep, dark garment which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. Scrooge knew no more, for it neither spoke nor moved. I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come, the ghost of the future. I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear your company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? The ghost gave no reply. The hand pointed straight before them. Yes, lead on. Lead on. The night is waning fast, and time is precious to me, spirit. Lead on. They went to an obscure part of town, to a low shop where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. The grey-haired rascal sat smoking his pipe. Scrooge and the phantom came into the presence of this man, just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop. But she had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in, and she was closely followed by an undertaker in faded black. After a moment of blank astonishment in which the man with the pipe joined them, they all three burst into a laugh. "Woman alone to be the first," cried she who had entered first. "Joe, here's a chance. Us three meet now without meaning it." "Oh, you all three couldn't have met in a better place. The other two ain't strangers. What have you got to sell, eh?" "Have a minute's patience, Joe, you shall see." "What odds then, Mrs. Dubber, what odds?" "Every person has a right to take care of himself. He always did. And who's the worse for the loss of a few things such as these? Not a dead man, I suppose." "Well, if you wanted to keep him after he was dead, the wicked old screw, why wasn't he more natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have had someone to be there when he was struck with death, instead of lying, gasping at his last and by himself." "A truer word was never spoken to judgment on him," said Mrs. Dilber. "Yeah, well, I wish it was a bit heavier, the judgment. Open your bundle, Joe. Let me know the value of it." "Speak out, plain. I'm not afraid to go first, nor afraid for them to hear it." Old Joe got down on his knees for the convenience of opening the bundle and drug out a large, heavy roll of some dark stuff. Oh, what do you call these? Bed curtains? Well, aye, bed curtains. Oh, well, don't drop that oil on the blankets now. It's blankets? Well, whose else's do you think? It's not likely to take cold without them. Well, I hope he didn't die of anything catching. I wouldn't be so afraid of that if I was you. I wasn't so fond of his company that I'd be loitering about him for such things if he had.
I'm scared.
You can look through their shirt till your eyes ache up, Joe, and you won't find a single hole or spread their place in it. It's the best he had in a fine one, too, and someone would have wasted it if it hadn't been for me. What do you call wasting it? Well, putting it on him to be buried in, to be sure. Someone was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again. Right off the body? Dead right. Well, that's the end of it, you see. He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive, to profit us when he was dead. Scrooge listened to the dialogue in horror. Spirit, I see the case of that unhappy man may be my own. My own life tends that way down. Yes, but heavens, what is that? The scene had changed, and he now nearly touched a bare, uncurtained bed. The pale light rising in the outside air fell straight upon the bed, and on it, beneath the ragged sheet, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, lay the body of this plundered, unknown man. Spirit, show me some tenderness in connection with the death. Oh, this dark place, Spirit, will be forever present to me. The ghost conducted him to Bob Cratchit's house, the very dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and daughter seated round the fire. Quiet. Very quiet. The noisy young Cratchits were still as statues in a corner, and looked up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and daughters were engaged in needlework, but surely it was very quiet. And he took a child and set it in the midst of them. Where had Scrooge heard those words? He had not dreamt them. The boy must have heard them. Why did he not read along? Mrs. Cratchit laid her needlework on the table and put a hand up to her face. The colour hurts my eyes. They're better now. It makes them weak by candlelight, and I won't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home. For the world. It must be nearly time. Past it, rather, answered Peter, shutting up his book. But I believe he's walked a little slower than he used these past few evenings. Oh, I have known him to walk with. Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. Very fast indeed. And so have I, cried Peter, often. And so have I, cried another, and so had all. But he was very light to carry, and your father loved him, sir. And it was no trouble at all. Oh, that must be your father at the door. She hurried out to meet him, and little Bob in his comforter came in. His tea was ready for him on the hob, and they all tried out who should help him to it most. Then the two young Cratchits climbed up upon his knees and laid each child a little cheek against his face, as if to say, "Don't mind it, father. Don't be grieved." Bob was very cheerful with them and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He looked at the needlework at the table and praised the industry and speed of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls. They would be done long before Sunday, he said. Sunday? So you went today then, Robert? Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. It would have done your heart good to see how green a place it is. But we'll see it often. I promised him we'd walk there on a Sunday. My little child. My little child. He broke down all at once. He couldn't help it. If he could have, he and his child might have been farther apart, perhaps, than we were. Spirit, Spirit, I sense our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how I know it. Tell me what man that was with the covered face whom we saw lying dead. The ghost of Christmas yet to come conducted him to a dismal, wretched, ruinous churchyard. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one of them. Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me when questioned. Are these the shadows of things that will be, or that may be only? Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends to which, if persevered in, they must surely lead. But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. See to show with what you show me. The spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept forward, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of this neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. No! Upon the bed. No, Spirit, please hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been for this intercourse. Why show me this if I have passed unheard? Assure me, I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three will strive within me, and I will not shut out the lessons they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone. Holding up his hands in one last prayer to have his fate reversed, Scrooge saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrank, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. And the bedpost was his own. And the bed was his own. And the room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own. To make amends in. Oh, Marley. If it in Christmas time be praised for this, I say it on my knees, oh Jacob, on my knees. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I'm as light as a feather. I'm as happy as an angel, as giddy as a schoolboy, as merry as a drunken man. Oh, a Merry Christmas to everyone, and a Happy New Year to all the world. Scrooge was checked in his transport by the churches ringing the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Ding dong merrily on high, in heaven the bells are ringing. Ding dong verily the sky is riven with angels singing. Scrooge ran to the window and put it open and thrust out his head. No fog, no mist, no night. Clear, bright, stirring, golden day. Oh, what's today? Cried Scrooge to a passing boy in Sunday clothes. Aye? What's today, my fine fellow? Today? Why, it's Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. Well, of course they can. They can do whatever they want. Hello, my fine fellow. Hello? Yes, do you know the poulterer on the corner on the next street but one? Well, I should hope I did. An intelligent boy, a remarkable boy. Yes, do you know if they've sold the prize turkey there? Not the little prize turkey, but the big one. What, the one as big as mine? What a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, be back. Well, it's hanging there now. It is. But go and buy it for me. Walker? No, I'm in earnest. Go out and buy it and tell them to bring it here. Then I may give them the direction on where to take it. Come back with the man and I'll give you a shilling. Oh, no. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes and I'll give you a half a crown. Oh, that boy was already shot. and sent it to Bob Cratchit's. He shan't know who sent it. Never was such a joke made as sending it to Bob's would be. The hand which wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did somehow, and took it downstairs to the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. It was a turkey. It never could have stood upon its own two legs, that bird. It would have snapped them off short in a minute like 2 sticks of sealing wax. Scrooge got himself dressed all in his best, and at last got out into the street. The people were by this point pouring forth as he had seen with the ghost of Christmas present. And walking with his hands behind his back, Scrooge regarded everyone with a delighted smile. He was so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humoured fellows said, "A Merry Christmas to you, sir, good morning," which Scrooge often said afterwards of all the blithe noises he had ever heard. Those were the blithest in his ears. Ooh. In the afternoon, Scrooge turned his steps towards his nephew's door. He must have passed it at least a dozen times before he got up the courage to go up and knock. So he made a dash and get it to Fred! Bless my soul, who's that? It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come here to dinner. Will you let me in? Let him in? It's a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. Nothing could be heartier. He was at home in a minute. Oh, wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. Scrooge was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was there early. If only he could get there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming in late. That was the thing he'd set his heart upon. And he did it. 9 o'clock, Bob. 1:15, still no Bob. Bob was a full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Scrooge sat with his door open that he might see the clerk coming into the tank. Bob's hat was off before he'd opened the door, his comforter too, and he was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen as if to overtake 9 o'clock. "Hello," growled Scrooge in his accustomed voice, well, as near as he could fade. "What do you mean by coming in here this time of day?" "I'm very sorry, sir. I'm behind my time." "You are?" "Why, yes, I believe you are. Step this way, if you please." "Oh, I'm very sorry, sir. It shall not be repeated. We were making rather merry yesterday." "Oh, making rather merry, were we? Well, I'll tell you what, my fine fellow. I'm not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. Therefore, I am about to raise your salary. Merry Christmas, Bob." Then I give you many a year. I need to call for help in a straight waistcoat. I will raise your salary, Bob, and endeavour to assist your struggling family. And we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a steaming bowl of smoking bishop. In the meantime, stoke up these fires, Bob, and buy another scuttle of coal before you dot another I, Cratchit. Oh, Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he became a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a man, as good a master as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in this good old world. Now some people laughed to see the alteration which had occurred in him. But his own heart laughed, and that was enough for him. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim once observed. God bless us, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming here this evening. I hope you were able to enjoy this little story, and I hope that all of you have a safe trip home, a very Merry Christmas, and God bless you. Thank you.